What is up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel for another video. Today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to read papers and we're going to talk about some breeding methods and we're going to talk about just all that kind of idea, and we're going to get pushed through this. I'm not quite sure how long this video is going to take. It might be a couple parter, but I feel like this is the best way to do it, is to visually represent it. So what I am going to do is I will display a picture of the papers that we're talking about. These are Tilly's papers, and we're gonna go ahead and jump into it. So I have my copy of Tilly's papers right here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and give these papers a good look. And as you guys can see right there, let's look at the sire side. Okay, so Squirrel Champion, Champion, Mid-10, Pissed Off Pig. Okay, so that actually he's now World Champion, 4-time World Champion, etc. He goes back to his sire, Drake's Creek Dexter, which is also very well renowned squirrel dog, and it also goes back to Rip It Up Rosie, which is here a Grand Squirrel Champion. Now I'm not sure if that is a world champion dog or not. So right there, as you can see, Pissed Off Pig comes out of 2 champions, and Dexter's a world champ dog. And then if we go back on either one of these guys' sides, okay, so if we go back from Rip It Up Rose, her sire and dam, they have no indicators, right? They have no titles and they have no indicators of a bloodline. So if I look at this, BR, Sledgehammer, and Pajama Mama. Okay, so it doesn't say somebody's last name, Pajama Llama or Pajama Mama. It doesn't say Squirrel Champion. So we know that these 2 dogs there were either not part of a line. Okay, so they're not a part of a established line and they have no titles, but they produced this Grand Squirrel Champion Rip It Up Rose, which was paired with, let's go up to the sire side, Drake's Creek Dexter. Okay, so Drake's Creek Dexter goes back, his sire is Squirrel Grand, Super Grand Squirrel Champion Odell's Cool Whip. Okay, so he goes back to Cool Whip, and his mother there, as you can see, has no titles and no indicators of being of a bloodline. So what that tells me is that if I don't have a farther back generation pedigree, but if Cool Whip is a line bred dog, that was an outcross made, and that outcross produced Drake's Creek Dexter, which in turn produced Pissed Off Pig. Okay, so now we have a producing line of dogs, and as we follow through the sire's bloodline to Pissed Off Pig, we have Grand Squirrel Champion, Super Grand Champion, Super Grand Champion, and Squirrel Champion. I believe, I know Pissed Off Pig is a world champion. I believe Dexter is a world champion as well. I don't know about Cool Whip. I'm assuming very well to do. I've heard this name a lot in the world of squirrel dogs, since I've been around in the squirrel dog community. Okay, so that it would be the top half. So what we're gathering is that Rip It Up Rose came out of kind of a scatterbred breeding with no line. Okay, so there's no line attached to that, but produced a very good dog. So this is a perfect example of titles not really meaning much. We can maintain a very high quality blood, maintain a very high quality producing dog, just by, keeping them in our own pocket, not showing them to the world. These dogs were obviously really well together to produce a Super Grand Squirrel Champion Rip It Up Rose, and she had carried enough blood in her to complement Drake Creek Dexter to go ahead and produce Pissed Off Pig. Okay, so let's go down to the dam side of Tilly. Okay, so Cole's Heart Pepper. All right, so what we can gather from this is when we have our last name. Okay, so like Adams is Tear 'em Up Tilly. Okay, technically, the way that we're supposed to do this is we are not supposed to. This is kind of a unwritten rule or unspoken rule in the world of paperwork. If I myself produced Tilly, so if Tilly was her mother and father were on my yard, I bred them and produced Tilly myself. Okay, then I should put Adams as tear 'em up Tilly. Okay, so I've done a no, but you know it is what it is. It's kind of like an unspoken thing, and it helps people reading paperwork. And technically, let's go ahead and go back to the sire and the dam of Cole's Heart Pepper. Okay, that is Barger's Boy Named Sue and Barger's Holiday Ann. Okay, so we can clearly see there that Barger is the producer of Cole's Heart Pepper. Okay, Cole's Heart Pepper technically should have a Barger's Heart Pepper. Okay, that's how that would work. So Tilly should technically have a mid 10 or something to relate back to Pissed Off Pig or even Drake's Creek Dexter. But as we've seen from Pissed Off Pig's registration, what we can gather from the paperwork there is that he was not line bred. Okay, so he was not line bred. He's not existing of a line. He's existing off of a cross. So when we have a dog existing off of a cross, then we kind of have our own ability to go ahead and put our name there. So when in the case of Tilly, I kind of have the ability to do that because Tilly is off of a cross. So nobody is really claiming a stake there to that bloodline. And Tilly would be one of two things, and we'll get into that after we finish up with the bottom half of her paperwork. Okay, so Cole's Heart Pepper came out of Barger's Boy Named Sue and Barger's Holiday Ann. That would technically mean that Cole's Heart Pepper should be a Barger dog on paperwork. So we know that she is a line-bred Barger dog, okay? So that is one thing that we should definitely pay attention to when we see this happen, to where we're having the bifurcation or the name change when a dog is explicitly line-bred and then it pops out and it has a different name attached. We have to pay attention to that because even though it says Cole's Heart Pepper, going forward, if he would breed that, then Tilly would be Cole, should be Cole's or should be Barger's, right? As a kind of a misnomer, as in figuring out exactly which lineage came from. So if I put Cole's Tilly, then we would assume that Cole's Heart Pepper is the line that is being established here, okay? So Barger's Boy Named Sue and Barger's Holiday Ann. Barger's Holiday Ann goes back to Barger's Doc Holiday and Barger's Maggie. So we know without a doubt that Barger's Holiday Ann is a line-bred Barger stock Feist, okay? That is the simplest, easiest way to determine a lineage, determine a line-bred dog, is houses, okay? So it'll say houses, blah, 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 or lippers, blah, 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 or nailers, blah, 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 or whatever, right? Or there'll be some type of indication of what the bloodline is in the name, okay? So obviously on Barger's Holiday Ann side, she is a Barger bred dog all the way back at least to that generation. Okay, so let's look at Barger's Boy Named Sue. Barger's Boy Named Sue goes back to Cosby's Double Dexter and Cosby's Kate. Okay, so what did we just discover here? Okay, so for number one, Barger's Boy Named Sue isn't a Barger bred dog, okay? He's on Barger's yard. Barger owns him. Barger bred him, okay? He is being incorporated as a cross out into the Barger kennels, okay? So Barger's Boy Named Sue is a Barger dog now, but prior would be a Cosby blooded dog, okay? And as we see as the sire to Boy Named Sue, that Cosby's Double Dexter, okay? So we understand that on the top half of Tilly's pedigree, she goes back to Drake's Creek Dexter. So then we have Tilly being a 1/4 Barger dog on the bottom half, and we have her being a 1/4 Dexter. So a quarter Barger and a quarter Dexter on her bottom half, and on the top half being another Dexter dog, and on the bottom half, which would be the dam, so top half it's sire, bottom half dam. So on the top half of Pissed Off Pig's side, she would be a Dexter dog. So we have both top sides of Tilly's pedigree, top and bottom. So her top side of her sire side would be a Dexter dog, and the top side of her dam side would technically be a Dexter dog as well. And in fact, it would be a double Dexter dog. dog. So Tilly is tripled up on Dexter blood in her pedigree for that fact. So Tilly is more Dexter blooded than she would be Barger stock Feist blooded. But we have the boy named Sue being a Barger dog. So at what point in time do we incorporate on over to pulling these dogs back into the fold once we outcross them? So boy named Sue would have been an outcross for Barger blood, and he brought them back in and he produced Cole's Heart Pepper. Okay, but Cosby's Kate. So we can also assume that Cosby's Double Dexter and Cosby's Kate, since they are both from Cosby's, that they are both relatively line bred the same. They are of the same stock. They are of the same kind of deal. So technically, if we want to assume, since it doesn't have anything indicating on Cosby's Kate that she is a Dexter bred dog, but seeing that Cosby's Double Dexter is part there on the top, we could understand that it is very highly possible that Cosby's Kate and Cosby's Double Dexter are both Dexter dogs, which would mean that Barger's boy named Sue is a inbred or a line bred Dexter dog, which would in turn add a extra line or extra lineage of Dexter to Tilly. Okay, so we understand that through both top sides comes down line breeding. Okay, so we do know that Drake's Creek Dexter was more than likely a line breeding off of Odell's Cool Whip. And then we also do know that Cosby's Double Dexter is a line bred off of Dexter, and Cosby's Kate is most likely a line bred off of Dexter as well, since Cosby has Dexter blood. Okay, so then the boy named Sue would be a really thick with Dexter blood, and then also a mid-10 pissed off pig would be at least half Dexter blooded dog. So we have Cole's Heart Pepper and pissed off pig both being around 50% Dexter blooded. Okay, well, we know for a fact that they're 50% Dexter blooded themselves, which would mean in turn we put two 50s together, they get 25 from each. Tilly would be a half Dexter dog, 1/4 Barger dog, and a 1/4 whatever Rip It Up Rose was. She has no lineage going back there. So of this paperwork that we're going over right now, I know of the 4 lineages that Tilly can come from, 3 of which are line bred. Okay, 2 of those line breedings are Dexter blooded and 1 is a Barger blooded dog. So we can understand and we can gather from the breedings on these papers and understanding how to read these and take them back and understanding what proportion of what blood is actually made it into our dog, what would be a good choice moving forward. Okay, so this brings me to my point of what to do with your dog once we understand and have read the paperwork. My best options, I have 3 options here. Okay, so I have 3 options here as if I were going to start breeding Tilly. I have one option of creating my own blood. Okay, so that means I would go find an outcross somewhere. I would go find a dog that I like. I would go find blood that I like. I would go find something to breed her to, i.e. if I bred her to a cur dog or a coon hound, or if I bred her to unrelated, a non-Dexter or a non-Barger dog, I could find a Feist to breed her to. And what would happen there, since I have Adams's Tear 'em Up Tilly, if I procured a dog of a non-known blood to this paperwork, it would be also an Adams blah blah blah, and when I produced those dogs, then it would be Adams's, right? So what I would do there is I would catch the dog, if I was going to do an outcross and try to create my own blood and do my own thing, I would catch a dog that's unrelated to any of these paperworks. So I know of a few bloods that I've considered, I know of a few things that I've looked into, but I also know that they are very well established dogs. Okay, so I know they are very well established and they are very well line bred, and they would technically be their own line of dogs. So I would be introducing a whole new line. Okay, so we talked a lot about this in our previous genetics video, or our previous, line breeding, etc. So you can take a line of dogs and a line of dogs and bring them together, and they be very bad for each other genetically. Or we can bring a line of dogs together that will be very good and very complementary. As we can see on Tilly's paperwork, the producing side of these papers Dexter blood and the bottom half of these papers, Barger blood, they do well together. I know that these bloods do well together because Tilly has done very well. I know that this Cole's Heart Pepper is a good squirrel dog, and I know that Pissed Off Pig is a very good squirrel dog, right? So I know that this Barger blood and this Dexter blood go well together. Okay, so I have to remember that. But when I grab another line, I could put those two together with this Dexter Barger dog that I have, and it not produce anything, and it'd be kind of junky. Okay, so that's a risk that you take when you want to create your own bloodline or you create outcrosses. Okay, so the other options here that I have is I have an option to breed her back to a Dexter dog. Okay, so then I would get more Dexter blood, and that would be me line breeding Tilly to a Dexter dog, which would be of her relation, a cousin, an aunt, or I can't breed it to an aunt, but a cousin, you get the idea, a cousin, an uncle, a second cousin, a great uncle, whatever. Okay, so that would up Tilly's quantum of Dexter blood, which means that the puppies that she would produce would be more like Drake's Creek Dexter than Tilly herself, even though she is more closer related generationally to him. So what I would actually do, and this is what I have thought of doing, is catching a half brother to Tilly, which would be a Pissed Off Pig offspring. Okay, so if I did that, so let's talk about that. If I got a half sibling to Tilly and I bred them together, Tilly would be doubled up on Pissed Off Pig. She would not be Dexter anymore, even though she would be. You would be considering that blood being a Pissed Off Pig blood because he's the blood that we're using. If I wanted to double, or if I wanted to up Tilly's quantum from Dexter blood, I would get a brother from Dexter. I would get a son from Dexter. I would breed her back to her uncle. Okay, so something that is way more closer to Dexter. Preferably, it would be a very good idea if I wanted to really drive this Dexter blood home, is to breed her back directly to Dexter, which would be her grandfather. And that would bring Dexter on her to the puppy's paperwork multitudes of times, right? Because it would be Dexter top and bottom. It would be Dexter going back. It would be Dexter all through the paperwork of that puppy. And that would be a very stacked papers. That would be a double or a triple up. It would be about a triple up and possibly even a quadruple up, depending on how far back Doc Holliday goes and Maggie Ann goes, if they go back to the same kind of stuff that the Dexter stuff does. There's no indication of that on these paperwork, but there would be nothing wrong with me taking Tilly, who is in part Dexter and Barger. So it would be a half Barger, a quarter, or no, I'm sorry, a half, I misspoke there, a half Dexter, a quarter Barger, and a quarter unknown. Unknown. We know the names, we don't know the line. So it would be half Dexter. If Tilly's half Dexter and we bred her to Dexter himself, what that would do is create a full set of papers for that puppy that is all Dexter blooded, and it would be almost like reproducing Dexter himself. What would happen? So that would be a very good idea to do something like that. So that was the second option: breed her to something Dexter. If I bred her to something Dexter, the pups that get out of her would most likely be a lot like Dexter, depending on the outcrosses that the people prior. I would breed her to a double Dexter dog, or a Dexter himself, or a brother to Dexter, or a son to Dexter, right? So a son to Dexter that is a line bred off of Dexter dog. And that would give me the best chances of producing or reproducing Dexter himself. That would be line breeding off of Dexter. I could create my own line and start line breeding Pissed Off Pig, if that's what I so chose, by picking up a half sibling, but it's technically still the Dexter dog. The other option that I have here is to go ahead and get a Barger dog to breed to. So when we have prolific bloodlines that are very well established and very well known, and they're everywhere, the blood, it can be trusted. Okay, so it can be trusted the same, and you can adhere to a certain quality that you're getting. You can adhere to kinks being worked out in these dogs. You can adhere to that kind of thing. Okay, so breeding her back to a Barger dog would be a very good idea also. But what we would be doing is we would be removing Dexter blood and replacing it with Barger blood, which I have no issue with doing. So I have inquired on multiple dogs that are of Dexter blood and Barger blood. I have one particular Barger blood dog right here close to me that I know I would really enjoy and have a good cross made with Tilly. And I was so inquisitive of this one particular dog. I actually called and I talked to Stacy Barger myself and asked him how closely related that they would be if I were to breed them, because he obviously bred Tilly's mother. And he says that he thinks that it would be a very, very good cross to make. I believe that would be doubling Tilly up on Doc Holliday, which is another very exceptional dog, a very well-known dog, especially on the Barger-blooded side of things. So I have a lot of options, and you guys have a lot of options too. We just have to read our paperwork, and we have to go through it and make these kind of decisions. So I'm left with 3 decisions, and I've pondered all of them. I would not have an issue breeding her back to Dexter, although I'm not so aware of all the Dexter blood. And as you can see on the paperwork, Dexter is one dog without any lineage going back to a specific person. He has no last name there. So was Dexter a oops? Was Dexter a product of a outcross? Was Dexter kind of a one-off kind of thing? Obviously not, because he produced Pissed Off Pig. But does that mean that the cross that was made to produce Pissed Off Pig makes Pissed Off Pig a producing dog? Tilly's a squirrel dog. She trees squirrels. I know he produces that much. Does he produce world champion level dogs? That's unknown. He does produce, but does he produce world champion level dogs? That would be the question. That would be the gamble that I would take to breed her back to a Dexter dog or a mid-10 Pissed Off Pig dog. Now, there's some other very good things to consider here when we start considering this. Is I know for a fact that Pissed Off Pig has a underbite, and I know for a fact that Pissed Off Pig throws dogs with underbites because Tilly has an underbite. Okay, so if I bred her back to a Dexter dog, or maybe not a Dexter dog, but if I bred her back to a Pissed Off Pig dog, I could be very much so compounding that undershot jaw issue. There's nothing about Tilly that I am unhappy with. There's nothing about her that I am not pleased with, but I do know that the undershot jaw is not a good thing. She doesn't have it so severely bad. I just know that it is a fault. It doesn't prevent them from hunting. It prevents them from showing. Okay, so a lot of people I'm in the realm of thinking that if the dog has an undershot jaw, what does that have to do with treeing squirrels? If you're producing world-class dogs, but they have undershot jaws, I guess the world-class dogs have undershot jaws. That's my opinion about it. I think that's the position a lot of people should hold to better on the breed. Yes, it's not okay to continue on that trend of throwing undershot jaws. So I have things that I could fix about Tilly, which would be the undershot jaw. And how I could go about fixing that is breeding her to Barger instead of breeding her to Dexter. Okay, so I think I have heard it buzzing in the squirrel dog atmosphere that Dexter dogs have the undershot jaws, or they tend to be so inbred or something like that, because they're doubling and tripling and quadrupling them up on Dexter, trying to reproduce Dexter, that they're throwing undershot jaws and things like that. There's also another thing, which Tilly has a completely black nose now, but when she was a puppy, she did have a pink nose, and then it eventually turned black. So there's another thing that I also know about Bargers, okay, that Buddy is a dog that he's currently got right now. Buddy has a pink nose. Okay, everything else about that dog I really like. I like the coloration. I like the black markings around the eyes, around the mouth. I would really like the build. He's a great little dog. The only thing about him that I am aware of that would be something that I would avoid, it was the pink nose, but that is only for show. That is the same thing as Dexter. Okay, so Dexter's throwing undershot jaws. At least that one dog of Barger's is throwing a pink nose. And I know from the Barger blood, because I own Barger blood, Tilly started with a pink nose, and I was very concerned for a long time that she was going to have a pink nose. But it turned black. Okay, so some of the other blood that I'm aware of that I can make my own crosses to, I do not know the paperwork or the lineage of these dogs whatsoever. I know that they are extremely line bred. I know a lot of them are extremely very tight bred. I know that the coats on them are a little long for my liking. I know one thing that I do like about them is they have a super high drive. They go far and they go fast, okay? And they're not shy about it. So however they've bred them dogs, they got them to the point to where they are getting gone, okay? So they are getting gone, staying gone till they tree one, and that is something that is very sought after, something that I would very much like to bring to Tilly's blood. One thing about Tilly that I do not like is she has pink skin under her coat, and she is also white. Okay, so she could be a black skinned dog with white fur, and I believe that she would be a lot tougher. So we hear a lot about the white skin, the fair skin, the pink skin being very non-durable. I know this from experience. Tilly is not a very durable dog, just as far as she was busting her legs up on the GPS collar. Okay, so I've never had that issue with any other dog, but I've never owned a white dog before. This Tilly would be the first white dog that I owned, and lo and behold, she kind of busted her feet up. So that's one thing that I know. So I could introduce all these things, right? So I could breed her back to Barger, end up with pink nosed dogs. I could bring her back to Dexter, end up with undershot jaws. I could breed her back to this other line that I'm aware of that I could have readily available to me that I could breed to, but I might be introducing things that, number one, that I'm completely unaware of genetically. I might do a couple things to help Tilly out, introduce a little bit tougher skin, a little bit tougher color, and a little bit more drive in her offspring. But one thing that I would not like introducing there is, number one, pricked ears. I do not like that. Mountain feist, string feist, the whole argument, blah, blah, blah. Just pricked ears. I like the folded ears. So I wouldn't appreciate having pricked ears. I wouldn't appreciate having longer fur. And some of the color combinations that come out of that blood, I'm not a big fan of either. So we're talking about we can give and take, give and take. If we double up on Dexter, we have a very good potential of producing some very, very, very nice squirrel dogs, but they might also come out a little bit ugly, right? If we run them back to Barger, obviously we can produce some very good looking dogs, some dogs that are going to perform on some kind of base level. We're introducing a consistency. We're introducing a related gene pool that is varied enough that it's not bottlenecking, things like that. So that is just off of the one set of papers. I have more papers over here, but after I got to looking at them, I can use them as kind of an example, a brief example. I am not going to go over these too extensively before. So the next set of paperwork that I got here, so these are CKC papers for my dog, Gypsy, and I'll pop them right up there. Okay, so a little bit of information. These guys were doing their thing when I purchased these dogs. Okay, so Gypsy Girl and Django were half brother and half sister. I purchased them out of two different litters at the same exact time. I myself have produced litters off of Django and Gypsy. Django, after he got a little bit older, he started getting a little bit aggressive and things, so we had to get rid of him. But at the same time, he didn't show any of that, and he showed to be a very excellent dog up until a certain age, which up until that point, we had already bred him and produced. I would have never produced dogs off of him if I knew that he would have been an aggressive type of dog eventually farther on in mid-adulthood, right? Okay, so as you can see on there, Just Hanking Around, Droopy-Eyed Ollie, Harper's Hoss, Haynes Hobo, Jane's Ann, Little Josie May. That is the sire side. Going back, Harper's Moon, Smoky Mountain, Harper's Ace of Hearts. So as we can gather from Just Hanking Around's top side, that we have Jane's and Harper's. Okay, so this is a Harper's blooded dog, and Droopy-Eyed Ollie is the father of Just Hanking Around. So just at a quick glance, we see Harper's. So he is also Harper's top and bottom there, and he is also doubled up on Droopy-Eyed Ollie. So if we go to Annabelle Jones, which would be Just Hanking Around's mother, her father is Droopy-Eyed Ollie. So this is a staggered one generation back, reintroducing Droopy-Eyed Ollie's blood back into Just Hanking Around, right? So Just Hanking Around is a double up of Droopy-Eyed Ollie. Droopy-eyed Ollie is a double of Harper's blood, right? See that? And then Dobbin's blood on the bottom. So Harper's and Dobbin's on the top and bottom. So Just Hankin' Around's mother is bred better than Droopy-eyed Ollie. Just in the fact, well, I guess they would be bred exactly the same because they're Harper's and Dobbin's. And Harper's and Dobbin's made a cross. They made Annabelle Jones. And then on the top half, you have Harper's with Smoky Mountain and Jane's and Jane's. So Droopy-eyed Ollie is on his top side is a Jane's and a Harper's. On his so Jane's and a Harper's and a Dobbin's and a Harper's. So Annabelle Jones and Droopy-eyed Ollie are Harper's blooded, Jane's blooded, and this one random Smoky Mountain Rambo. So we know Just Hankin' Around is line bred off of number one, Droopy-eyed Ollie, right? He's the closest related relative that has the same name. So Droopy-eyed Ollie, Droopy-eyed Ollie. He's doubled up on Droopy-eyed Ollie. Droopy-eyed Ollie is Jane's and Harper's, right? And then, so we have a combination of Harper's and Jane's to create Droopy-eyed Ollie, a double up of Droopy-eyed Ollie to create Just Hankin' Around. Now let's look at the bottom. Hazel's, Dolly's, May. Okay, so we have LNGs. We have basically that, right? So we have a creation of a line there. If we go to the top side, Joe's CN Big D Henry. Okay, the generation before that, he's produced out of LNG's Clovis and LNG's Sophie. So we know that these two dogs are of the same yard, because if you go back, none of them dogs are related. None of them dogs are any indication that they are of the same blood. So we have two scatterbred breedings. Same person bought dogs from each. They took those two dogs, produced CN Big D Henry. He then produced Hazel's Dolly Mae. So let's go back on the mother side there. Joe's Tri Gretchen, Big Boy Bob, Little Dolly, Cruz P, Ridge Red Fred, Aiden's Lucy Lou, Noodle, Lowry's. So as you see on the bottom side of Hazy's Dolly Mae, that it's completely scatterbred. So the top and the bottom of Hazel's Dolly Mae is scatterbred all the way to the top, or all the way back to Hazy's Dolly Mae, and then that is partnered with Droopy-eyed Ollie double up. So what we have done there is we have tightened up a bloodline for Just Hankin' Around to the point that we need an outcross. The outcross is then a scatterbred dog. Okay, so this is something that is kind of, you can do this. I was just talking about doing this with Tilly. I just go grab another dog, right? I just go grab another dog that is scatterbred, it doesn't matter, and I start creating my own line. So this is what they've done there. So when I purchased a puppy out of this litter, now I don't have the other dog's paperwork, so I couldn't tell you his mother's lineage, but the top side of his papers are exactly the same. So when I bred this half-brother and this half-sister together, I doubled up on Droopy-eyed Ollie and that whole line. So I doubled up this Harper's line, which is the main line that goes through Just Hankin' Around. And I added the Dobbins and the Smoky Mountain Rambo, right? But I've doubled it up then, essentially. And what I've done is I've tightened that line back up and brought it back to the true line. Okay, so I've took the outcross litters and I bred them back together to make them a line again. So what I was doing is I was completing and carrying on their line. So on their paperwork and even on this paperwork, it doesn't say Adams's, it doesn't say blah, blah, blah. I knew from what I was doing that I was continuing on a line. Now going forward, my puppies that I produced, I just sold them on and let people name their dogs whatever they wanted to name. But as an operating thing, I was putting these two half siblings together to create and carry on the line and to get the Harper's blood and the Droopy-eyed blood going on. So that's another option that I have in doing, right? You have an option of getting two line-bred dogs that are ready and should click well together and just breed and produce those kind of dogs. That's just kind of what it is. And this is just kind of the world of paperwork and things like that. So I kind of rushed through that one. I hope you guys could follow along just fine. So another set of papers here that I have is I have my min pin, my wife's min pin's paperwork, also a CKC dog. As we can see, I'll put that right up there. Local Maverick Escobedo. That's the only registration on that whole top side. Okay? That is the only registration on that whole top side. Everything behind that is all original stock. So they have no information for the dogs before that. So what that can tell me and what that can say for you is that those dogs prior were not CKC registered. Okay, so they were not CKC registered. He is registered, Loco Maverick is registered as a Red Merle. And then on the bottom, Amora Loca goes back to DWR's Tanner, DWR's Cranky Yankee, Hershey and Kisses, Bruiser Natasha, DRK's Rocky Boy, DRK's Fred Peanuts. So the bottom half of this the Amora Loca going back, we can just really see that it's DWR's. Everything before that is original stock, and that produced Chips Durstudley. And on the bottom half, we can assume that Hershey and Kisses are related because their name is Hershey Kisses, right? And then before that, Bruiser and Natasha, and then DRK's Rocky Boy. So of what we know of Sasha is that she is DRK's blood, and she is DWR's blood on the bottom. On the top, we have no idea. So that's some of the things that we can do. So what we can do there is we can seek out a dog, a min pin that's unrelated. We can seek out a min pin that is related. We can seek out a belly mate. We could seek out anything that we want because we have the unknown kind of genetics, and we just see what we do and see if it happens. So one thing that I want to make clear, if we are inbreeding, so if we're doing brother, sister, full brother, sisters, mother, daughter, daughter, son, if doing things like that is going to create a bottleneck genetically, and it could end up very badly, and we don't have enough diversity to keep a healthy animal. Another thing that happens is the closer and tighter bred that you get to one another, the tighter bred you get, litter size goes down. Okay, so litter size goes down. Now there is a great channel that I have watched for a while, or that I keep on referring back to when I get into my breeding kind of phases or looking at this kind of thing, and that is Canine or American Sentinel Canine or something like that. I'll put a link somewhere. This guy he has a degree in biology, and he has a degree in animal studies and things like that. So he is actually a college educated guy when it comes down to breeding tactics, and it comes down to this, and he's producing his own line of dogs. It has totally nothing to do with coon dogs or anything like that. It's band dogs and pit bulls. But again, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about, and he sits down and he talks all this stuff with everybody. So I'll make sure that I'll give him a shout out and give him some props, because I actually just watched some of his videos for the second or third or fourth or fifth time as a refresher. But I hope breaking this down gets a lot of ideas. And if you guys have questions of what we should be looking for when we're looking for stud dogs, when we're looking for outcrosses, when we're looking for things like that, just the knowledge that I have, I can try to help y'all out. And I think I'm going to go ahead and make a video of that. I mean, this is a 40-minute long video. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I also know that a lot of guys probably could use a lot of that information, and breaking down papers like that and deciphering options and seeing what we have. I wish I had some better papers to look at for you guys. I don't have any. I have Tilly's UKC paper, so she is dual registered now, and I that's my other option. There is, I definitely, without a doubt, want to breed back to something that is dual registered, or breed back to something that is at least just UKC. That way I can guarantee getting back in the NKC and all this whole thing. But achieving a purple ribbon status in the UKC would be a very cool thing to do. But obviously, I that's going to take a very long time for someone like myself to do. I only have rooms for so many dogs. I'm actually in a position to where, to even breed Tilly and keep something, I would have to get rid of Tilly, right? So I'm at my threshold for the amount of dogs that I have to keep, and that's just how it is. And that puts you in a spot to where I can produce dogs with Tilly, but if I want to keep going generationally, I'll have to get rid of her. So it puts you in a spot. But thanks for tuning in, y'all. Y'all keep them treed. Hope y'all like this video. Talking pedigrees, breaking down things, talking breeding. I didn't think that anybody wanted to hear this kind of stuff, but let me know down in the comments if you want me to keep on going on with this kind of stuff. I know I've talked to a couple subscribers, over the past however long, that they were looking into breeding their dogs and doing this kind of thing and picking studs and this kind of thing. But y'all keep them treed.